Greetings, this is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Are you manifesting with your true will? What does that mean, and what's the difference? Aren't we all manifesting with our true will? What is will? What is free will? And what's the point of studying a bunch of spiritual techniques? Well, today we're going to have somewhat of a discussion. Oh, you got the pure leaf tea. See, I'm still sipping on the brisk.
Peace, guys.
What's going on, Society Ejects?
How long you guys been alive?
I literally just cut it on when you joined.
Oh, okay. What's up, Richard? What's up, Dope?
What's up?
What's up, Society? Good to see you, brother. How you doing, man?
You doing great.
Awesome, man.
I think that when a lot of people get to the point that they're ready to start looking into spirituality and they're ready to start looking into what it means to have a life of purpose, a life of meaning, we start to examine our thought process. I think that's just a natural result of introspection. We start examining our thought process. And for some people, there's what's called a pain threshold. And that's not just necessarily physical pain, that's also mental and emotional pain. A lot of the mental patterns that we find ourselves repeating are put in place for us to avoid certain types of pain. For example, a lot of us are on autopilot simply because we fear that it would be too painful to not go with a program like that. So ultimately, when it comes to a deep spiritual practice, the Philosopher's Stone, the diamond that is sharpened, is what's called the true will. Now, in yoga, or specifically Samkhya, this is actually what they mean by the term Ahamkara. See, before I thought that Ahamkara was simply another word for the ego. Now they define Ahamkara as the I maker, the one that says, this is me, that is me. But in truth, when the Ahamkara is refined, it becomes what magicians of the past have called the true will. And indeed, it's very, very difficult to manifest without this true will having some sense of development. And here's why. As we grow up on autopilot, as we live our lives for 10, 20, 30, sometimes even 40 or 50 years without getting a real knowledge of self, we don't come to know the spiritual aspect. We just don't come to have any type of relationship with it. So instead of developing the true will, we develop this false will that we think is free will when it's really just having a choice. But this false will is entirely based upon things that we've picked up with our five senses and what pleases us or displeases us. And that's what we're choosing from. What pleases the five senses or what displeases the five senses. Now, where error can come into play is in the fact that pleasure and pain are not clear indicators of what is right and wrong or what is useful and appropriate. Indeed, there are many things that feel wonderful but are not good whatsoever for you. And likewise, there are things that feel bad, which are the best thing that you could possibly do right now. For example, going to work out at the gym, it can be a painful process. Absolutely. Exhausting. If one were strictly to develop their personality based on their five senses, we would consider something like that not so good. And that's just a crude example. So expand that and think about a person's entire life based on avoiding pain and gravitating towards pleasure and believing that that is free will. And this is why it's not free will, because where did the impetus for that choice come from? What made you choose this? What made you not choose that? So spiritual practice, what that actually does for an individual is it helps one to develop what's known as the true will. The Ahamkara is a sense of individuality beyond the physical body, right? A sense of individuality, a sense of knowledge of self, of the self that exists beyond the physical. Without this, a person believes that they are composed of the influences of their environment. Product of my environment, as they say. Now, this is an individual who will sufficiently lack the power to change their destiny or to change their life as it is now. They simply have to go with the flow because that's what they believe. They don't see any other choices for themselves. So if you are somebody who is suddenly feeling unfulfilled, like you're not reaching your full potential, feeling like life is happening to you, well, this is probably why. Because you're defining yourself based on the influences of your environment and your five senses. Because you haven't realized that there's actually another choice. Oh, but there is. Peace to everybody in the chat. Peace to this chat and to the YouTube chat. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Peace, MC Maestro.
Peace. Hello, chat. Hello, everyone.
The interesting thing is this aspect of the Ahamkara, the ego, it isn't simply something that determines the personality. Ahamkara exists above and beyond the tattvas, the tanmatras, the mahabhutas. It exists beyond the indriyas, or the five senses. The ego itself, or this Ahamkara aspect, exists beyond manifest reality, which means it also exists beyond the astral plane and the mental plane. They call it the I maker because its function is to shape and design an individual. Now, while this is happening even in the sleeping people, well, it's happening in the unconscious people as well, the I maker is making itself out of the environment, and that's the issue. And a spiritually evolved person, that I maker is creating itself out of itself. And there's a difference. That's why it's called the true will, because when the self is created out of the self, number one, you're modeling after the Most High, you're modeling after God, Purusha, Shiva, whatever you want to call it. And you start to get closer to that unconditioned state. It's still conditioned because you still have to kind of build it out of some form that you know, but it becomes more purified because it's not built off of impure things like the world that's given to you. Let me know in the chat if that makes sense, like if it actually makes sense, not just if it sounds good, but let me know if you understand what I'm saying. I've been on my Samkhya study again. I swear every time I study Samkhya I feel like I get smarter. Let me guess. Is that 7-Eleven? Haha. I'm on a roll. All right. Well, peace, Lance Benefield. Peace, Phoenix Wolfette. Peace, Miyaim. However you say that. Soul Brother J, peace. Marcos Lucas, peace. Hakeem Lamidi, peace. Kevin Wise, peace. Rohan Russell, peace and greetings. Backyard Garden Journey, peace. Midnight Mina, peace. Court Singh, peace, peace. Laila Safuate, peace. Lance Benefield says, mature your ego. Don't get rid of it. Absolutely. And this is what we're talking about. The ego, and again, as a disclaimer, we're not talking about the aspect of you that causes you to think that you're better than, or any type of estimation of self. That's not what it's about. What we're actually talking about is the will, the true will. The true will. The true will is the expression of spirit. And if the true will, if this expression of spirit is based upon the illusion of the external world, then it's not free will and it's not true will. It's illusory will. Peace, Gerald Sombright.
So, Mr. Trev,
Yes.
as I'm sure you're getting to, how would one go about, I guess, basing or intentionally attuning their Ahamkara towards what is beyond the five senses or the five tattvas?
So, this is a process that does tie into sort of what I talked about 2 live streams ago, where there has to be an identification between, a distinction between what is in the environment and what is observing the environment. And this is a process that has to happen on the physical plane, then the etheric plane, then the astral, then the mental. Now, on the physical plane, it's very simple. It's distinguishing between the fact that while I have a certain style of dress, while I've achieved certain goals, while there are mistakes I've made, while there's a job that I work, there's all these different things that I can use to describe myself. Those are not me. They're literally not me. They are things that I've done. Well, they are a description of memories, but that's not who and what I am. When a person really gets that distinction, and I mean really gets that, right? That begins the process of discernment and separating the external world from the internal world. There's a doer and there's an observer. The distinction made between the doer and the observer is how that process happens on the physical plane. On the etheric plane, it happens in the same context, but with different content. We understand that the etheric plane is a plane that deals with imagination. It deals with being able to have a reality to call forth at will. Now, it's not really at will. Most people just imagine experiences that they've already had, right? But sometimes we do conjure up things that haven't existed yet. Now, the issue here is the same. Are we able to distinguish what is imagined versus what we are, or do we identify ourselves by our imaginings? Because anyone can imagine anything, pleasant or unpleasant. Just because you have scenes of death and murder doesn't mean that you are a crazy person, because anybody can have those visions. I mean, hell, you just turn on the TV or Netflix or whatever and see stuff like that. And of course, it's going to bounce around in your head. But there has to be a strength to be able to see things in the imagination and not cling to it and say, oh, this is me. On the astral plane, the same context. The content is now the emotional experience, the states that we express ourselves through, right? The different shifting states. Like I mentioned before, we have this bag that we hold like Santa Claus, and we call it a personality. And the gifts that we put in that bag are the different states that we wear every day, right? Today, I'm going to be a focused, studying individual, and then I'm going to go out and I'm going to party and just be reckless and wild, and then I'm going to be very angry, then I'm going to be very horny and try to do whatever I can. All these different states that we employ on a regular basis, we call that our personality. But having a strengthened, solidified Ahamkara understands that none of those things are yours. They exist without you. You could die today, and all those different states are going to express themselves through somebody else, even as they're doing right now. These are universal states. They're not you. They're not you. So you get what I'm saying. And of course, up to the mental plane, these families of concepts, right? You may be pulling thoughts from being broke, right? There's a family of thoughts about being poor. There's a family of thoughts that have a very lack mentality about money, finance, and abundance and things like that. It's a family. So you're pulling, oh, I can't afford this. This just isn't for me. There's a lot of thoughts associated with that in that bubble. There's a thought up here of wealth, right? And even within that wealth, there's subcategories of extreme wealth. Within each one of those bubbles are certain kinds of thoughts. Now, no matter who you are, you're attached to some bubble and you're sucking down thoughts, right? But in this mental plane, it's extremely easy to believe that we are those thoughts. But once again, they exist with or without your presence. So they're not you. Again, there's a difference between the doer and the observer. The observer understands that there's just observation. There's just reality. None of it is yours. So to answer your question, how does one do that? One does it on one plane at a time, starting with the physical. Was that clear?
Yes, indeed. Especially with the wrap up.
Awesome.
So, Travis, so the end goal would be come in alignment with the causal body.
Like I said, the observer and the doer, right? The observer, the causal body, right? The causal body, first of all, is the origin of all those expressions. So, of course, where the fall happens is when that causal body begins to start attaching to those things. Now, I explained it in reverse, but imagine this. You fall into a cloud bubble of poor thinking, lack, right? And as you fall into that cloud bubble, you grab onto different thoughts associated with lack. I can't afford this. This ain't me. We'll never do this. That's not what we do. As you fall deeper into the astral plane, you start attaching states that go along with those thoughts, right? Somebody who's miserly and just, I'm not going to spend money on stuff because we just can't. You see what I'm saying? You start to collect emotions and states with that. Then you fall deeper into the imaginative plane and you literally start creating a reality based upon those thoughts and those states. And then finally you manifest a physical life that plays all that out. That's the karma. So the causal plane is just an observer of that movie. And that's one movie in an infinite number of possibilities. The causal plane is one thing that observes all the different characters. But when one thinks that he is the character, you start to lose that sense of individuality. And that's the process that we start over. We start in reverse. That's where we are right now. Splendid. Just like what Manly P. Hall mentioned in the book, right? It's the goal is to come into alignment with the grand pattern, the grand scheme, the grand man. Adam Kadmon, Purusha. When you see the imagery of Purusha, within him is contained the universe. You don't see somebody with a suit and tie. You don't see somebody with a baseball cap. You don't see somebody with gold chains. You don't see somebody with cowboy boots. He's all people, all possible expressions. So how can you reflect infinity? What would that look like? Does that sound like a far-fetched fantasy, or is that something that you can actually conceive? To skip to the answer, how can you express infinity? By realizing that you've always been doing that. The difference is you don't believe that this is the end-all be-all. I am expressing infinity just by being who I am, and you're doing the same thing. But there shouldn't be any attachment to it. Peace, sunshine chick. Peace and greetings. Occult topics with the professor. The Grand Man.
What is that? What are you sharing right there?
It's just a picture of a silhouette person spinning around with DNA and brains and stuff. As I consider the concept of Purusha, right? This prototype of human.
Awesome.
Could that be what Bobby Hemmett was talking about when he was talking about melanin?
If you ask me, I would say absolutely. That's your melanin.
Whenever anyone throws up the melanin, it immediately takes me back to when I was in school, holistic nutrition school, because we're taught there on ways that the biggest reason it comes up is because of people who are going gray prematurely with their hair. So whenever you guys, and then we teach them techniques, natural ways that they can reverse their graying hair. So when you guys bring up the melanin, my brain just kind of like it short circuits. It's like, wait, it's not that.
But don't watch them old videos because you're gonna be having that a lot.
You see, in these grimoires, you can reverse the gray in hair thanks to your melanin.
Yeah.
That's your shit.
That's your shit.
Man, so I've been talking with a coworker who's a luminous person. And in order to, I guess, get on his playing field, I started reading the New Testament. And after those 4 books, and there's like a whole lot of shit to break down, especially in John.
Mm-hmm.
But after reading those 4, the history nerd part of me was delighted to see that there's more. I never knew that there was more than the Gospels to the New Testament. There's all sorts of letters from the apostles to different sects and branch of Christianity in the early period. And what I later found that did is when you get to the Council of Nicaea, where they kind of codified the presuppositions and those attractor thoughts. I forgot what they're called, the matrix model, or like attractor thoughts, attractor states, to what at the time was Christianity, the church. It made me realize that one, by adopting their own presuppositions, using the 4 gospel as presuppositions or the attractor states, you could then, and Django had mentioned this too with the movie The Book of Eli, you could then start to either create or collect your own, pretty much your own supplementary books, just like how the letters were supplementary to the gospels. You could kind of, whether it be apocrypha, whether it be grimoires, or maybe even make your own story or path working with occult significance, you could then accumulate those to solidify whatever narrative that you're trying to express. And who knows, there could be someone on Earth, or a lot of people on Earth with your specific temperament, and they are currently spiritually underserved.
I like that because again, at least to me, from what I hear, that's another way to reflect infinity, right? If we do exist in different prototypes and archetypes, but when you zoom out, there's only so many differences that we can have, so many combinations. And each one of those combinations is a trail that leads back to the infinite. What I talk about doesn't attract everyone, but it attracts a certain type of person, right? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, the ending part. Whereas that's an example of drawing down, like, or at least how I was seeing it, drawing down the current that already exists, but you're kind of you're aligning those states that you want. You're aligning those other worlds from the causal body and how it expresses to here. And the last part is more of reflecting what you just said. if one were to focus on some type of work with the masses.
Almost like creating a religion for people like yourself.
Correct. As has happened time and time again, surprisingly, using the vehicle of what we call Christianity.
I see. And each one of these creations, ideally looking at them from the assumption that they began with good intentions, was a collection of mantras and meditative practices that can lead one to an experience of this true will, an experience of this higher aspect of the self. Because that's what religion is, right? A pathway to meet this holy guardian angel, a pathway to meet this soul. A pathway to meet your soul. And okay, I like that. So if, from what you're saying, each one of these religions potentially began as an individual who came into if we zoom out a bit and see this umbrella of the higher self having multiple different incarnations, right? This higher self having multiple different archetypes. If one were to tap into that and create a pathway to get in contact with that and serve it to the other expressions, the other incarnations of that archetype, that'd be a pretty nice thing, right?
I'd say that would be the virtue of Tiferet, devotion to the higher work.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. And there's room there to even conceive of how every different type of religion ain't for everybody, right? Because some people don't have the same oversoul. And then, of course, there's the potential that there may be someone who tapped in even higher than Tiferet, which is what I'm going to wager the Vedics did.
I'd say as well, looking at both the Council of Nicaea and later when you have Martin Luther's 99 Thesis and what was called the Diet of Worms was actually like debates with Theosophists and priests. Most of these, we always hear about the stuff in the Bible being changed or removed, but the arguments that they're presenting in these councils are actually arguments about the Sephira and which pathway in Sephira that primary that denomination will be primarily tapping into. And so the changes that they make in the Bible for each denomination is reflective of that pathway.
That's actually really big when you think about that. So it isn't simply about people trying to hide information by taking books out of the Bible. It's more of a pruning of what soul is being reflected and tapped into. What specific soul? Whoa, could it be that Christ is really here to save his manifestations, the body of Christ?
It's been blowing my mind all week, slowly piecing that together.
And everybody ain't part of the body of Christ, and that's okay. Because there ain't just one Christ. Oh boy. That's really cool. That's some shit I never heard before.
I see a Constantine and young Melanin. That's what I've heard thus far. I had to start from scratch.
Wow.
That was good, MC. I can see growing up in Christianity, like different denominations being different pathways. Like we had Pentecostals, we had Baptists, Catholics. I can see them being different pathways.
Mormon and then you think about like the certain groups of the Jewish belief system, right? And how
Mhm.
some of them believe that it's just Jehovah's Witness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
I
they're
would,
right. Maybe those are expressions of that particular entity.
Mm.
there is a cool kind of, that's how I started piecing this together, was I actually saw a video with kind of, I took the presuppositions that they were arguing with Sephra and whatnot. Then I saw more stuff, uh, as Christianity evolved, I saw more stuff being apparent. And the largest one that helped me kind of crack the code was, I think it was like Mormons, um, Jehovah's Witness, the sect that has a Salvation Army. There's like one other big one. They did not take the presuppositions of the Nicene Creed, and thus the expression of religion they have is like wildly different, even though that they're evolving from this they're using the same correlations, but they're evolving like totally differently. So when they say, oh, it's not Christian, they're just not drawing from the same spiritual plane or absolutic plane, but using the same content to get down to the physical.
Mm.
I was about to mention, considering that I was under the impression that with all post-Abrahamic religions, the source material for those, which you can trace back the lineage to the Dead Sea Scrolls, but you can trace the source material for the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. So thinking about the causality, or anyway, of the entity or the expression of spirit that came through as Thoth, for the evolution of those particular expressions of religion in whichever way. And then my brain thought, well, if those are kind of not Indo-European, I'm trying to think of where that would be situated geographically for the origination of those expressions. Where would Zep Tepi and the creation prior to any of the ancient Egypt come? Because how would that fit into that equation? If you're
Oh,
talking,
I've also reflected on that a lot, and at least I can't answer the question for you because like in my framework, I don't hold stuff like Atlantis and whatnot. Kind of, I just don't hold it to be true. Um, but as we have seen, I'm glad you mentioned the Emerald Tablets. Is that what was published as the Emerald Tablets was, I guess, noveltified Vedic information.
and I thought something like that would come up specifically, hence why I mentioned Zep Tepi, because I'm not trying to poo-poo anything when it comes to the Vedic texts. They're infinitely fascinating, and there's a gargantuan, endless depth of knowledge which can be ascertained and then utilized for the greater good for soul development. I'm coming to the Zep Tepi though, because a lot of what flourished into ancient Egypt comes from the Zep Tepi tradition. So I was curious if you were able to see any correspondences pertaining to that creation myth with Zep Tepi to the novelty that is expressed in the Emerald Tablets.
This is my first time actually hearing about Zep Tepi. Can you illuminate me, please?
Oh,
At least like a summary, because I just found like a whole bunch of stuff that popped up.
now that's okay. Well, they have a wisdom tradition anyway that consists of with the modern inception of the elementals, when it comes to a lot of the Vedic tradition, they have 15 elements as the part of the basis of their wisdom tradition. One of which is the mushroom. I'm not exactly sure where I should go, I was just curious if, because I don't want to usurp the conversation. I want you guys to continue with what you're saying, because I was enjoying it so much. I was just curious if you had if that was any factored into your thinking whatsoever.
I'm going to use two things that you said, because you've actually brought two good pieces of information here, that, or one piece that kind of answers the question about Zeptepi from what I'm seeing right now. You did mention Dead Sea Scrolls, of which were, and to my surprise as well, like recently delving into the stuff, what we call like the Dead Sea tradition, the various Gnostic schools, Orthodox Christianity, and there were also early Christian movements that didn't quite make it. They all actually evolved, kind of sprang up at the same time with the supposed death of Christ. Like all of these existed and kind of more or less fought for their dominance. But they all have this one core. And that one core is expressed in pretty much 4 different mediums, although there's more. And from what I'm seeing about Zeptepi, I guess this specific Egyptian creation myth, and we may have heard different creation myths throughout the ages, just as Christianity had this one spark that unfolded 4 primary type schools, with, let's say, one being the dominant. What I'm seeing from Zeptepi as well is that it's a specific type of creation myth, but we, in our time have seen multiple creation myths. So at least what I'm getting right here is that there was this core ancient creation myth that needed to be expressed through different ways. And one of them was this Zeptepi. From what I'm reading here is that basically a primordial period, but just by like kind of mainly scrolling up and down and whatnot, the myth is varying, but that at least shows me that what we call Zeptepi is the same way, just like with Christianity, except I have different arguments about prana, but that'll take forever. Is that this one concept got expressed many different ways.
It's a little convoluted how the expression can come with how you're going to choose to interpret it. I was just curious because you had really piqued my interest when you were mentioning specifically about the different expressions of the post-Abrahamic traditions, and how it ties back with what you're mentioning previously. I was just thinking in a chronological fashion how far back. So I don't really I didn't mean to kind of derail to go to Zeptepi. I was just curious how far back, because a lot of those post-Abrahamic traditions stem from the Emerald Tablets, essentially.
If we're going like just chronological wise, I'd say to wherever you place the start of what we call intelligent man, or if you're, however your personal, because I know people that don't. I go off like what's called paleoanthropology, but I guess there's lack of data, pretty much. But it's to wherever you place where.
With you saying lack of data, that stems specifically with what was mentioned previously with pruning. Similar concept with that of the origination of Zeptepi, because to be initiated into those schools, it's fairly rigorous, because the information is being intentionally sequestered so it wouldn't be abused. It's just, it would take a little more than what I think can be expressed by me right now in my current situation here to talk about Zeptepi. I was just curious about how it came back, because there's some of what you'll get in like a quick search,
right,
may not give you the decent
Full
overview that
context.
would be, yeah, exactly, to try and put it in a nutshell, because it's a lot of it is just it's hard to find some reputable info from that stuff. You got to dig,
Okay.
and it's by design, right?
I wouldn't say by design. I'd say there's. Have you played that one game? I think it was big a few years ago called .io. It's like the dots that swallow each other.
I'm no, I'm not familiar with that.
A few years ago, there was it was a great game, but like everyone could get on this game anonymously, and you would collect smaller dots. Eventually, you run into different size dots, which were actually other players. Whoever the bigger dot was would overcome the other players, and eventually, someone on the server would get so big that they just absorb everything. And that's how I view a lot of this information, not deliberately hidden or even a lot of times not even hard to find. It's just that certain information has gotten so big it kind of crowds everything else out. And it does take a little bit of like specialized focus to parse away what that big chunk of information is that's not really serving. It just takes a little time. But as I don't know if you remember when like Trav did the focus challenge as well. Like over time, whatever specific thing you're looking for will reveal itself. And the more you find like accurate information, that becomes correspondence and the core thing starts to be revealed. But yeah, it would just take like, I would have to write that down and then at another period kind of zone in on that. Because even for me to get the information I just spoke took since November to actually stamp my foot on that specific piece.
Very commendable. It was very illuminating. Thanks for sharing about that. That was a great metaphor with the game too. Totally understood it.
Glad I could help.
I remember worm.io. Well, it was the same thing except giant worms.
Right, that was a fun one too.
In the chat, Nuru says Zep Tepi is the parent civilization of dynastic Egypt. The pyramid texts and pharaonic texts carved in stone predate everything else written down anywhere on Earth.
Might take some clip-off diving.
Anamali says if the Vedic texts are getting info above Tifereth, then that would explain it being older and source.
This is also like essential for governments as well. One thing I've been seeing along the way to get to that conclusion is different. It's a little more obvious, kind of ancient period to, I'd say, World War I. Like in between there, you could see blatantly which countries, which factions are drawing down above or drawing down at specific sephira and how they played out. If we look in the ancient period, like something like Carthage, what you get if you kind of scry into that civilization as a whole, very fun, is you will get a Venusian Netsak influence. Now reflecting in society being very known for luxury and also never fighting battles head on. They would use illusion and trickery. Likewise, there was the Parthians who were mercurial, and they were largely mobile civilization. They didn't really last that long. But as time progressed, these factions got more and more complex. And getting more and more higher into the Sephira. Instead of now using planets, they're going to the they're accessing deeper things. They're going, once they start inventing bureaucracy, now that's breaching into Yetzirah. And then they start developing like, I guess, more of a cultural identity, and you start getting into a golden age in that concept that's tapping into the astral. And then kind of when you start ruling over other nations, becoming a big force, you're tapping into the mental plane. And when you start causing and churning out karma, now you're dealing with the absolutic plane. So both these like religions and then the sufficient civilizations hosting these religions, you kind of see like this interdynamic play of what's being expressed.
So, as a human race, we really are evolving along the tree. I wonder what that says about where we are now. If Yetzirah, as you said, in this mental plane was, really tapped into at the initiation of bureaucracy, democracy, and that type of thing. I wonder what that means for us today.
Today, I haven't seen a worldwide thing, or if I were to judge it worldwide, I would say we're moving into Yesod as a whole. But individually, certain chunks of land are kind of going through their own phase. I could definitely see America kind of touching, not even touching, in this weird spot between Hod and Netzach, where a lot of things are very confusing and not what they appear to be, and people taking form as truth, even though these forms are representing higher influence. I could see Russia right now going from Geberah and kind of sliding down to Tifereth, being that to I have a whole theory about Rome and whatnot. I'm gonna try not to get into it, but essentially, to make a powerful empire, you have to first expand using Geberah, and which we've seen with the Ukraine war, and then this consolidation of influence to create a golden age, which I believe is what's going to be the next step. That's more Tifereth.
Despite all the fear porn and the people who love the fear porn, I think it would be in the best interest of the powers that be to move as much of the world as possible into a golden age. But I think as a whole, the masses of people have a very difficult time seeing that because of all the trauma that is deeply ingrained into the average person.
Ain't that part of what Tantra is? Doesn't always have to be pleasant, but this is the feeding and then the milking of emotional energy to accomplish a goal.
Yes.
I was just about to mention with Loosh, which is beings on the astral who feed on Loosh, right? So I think that it may be part of the agenda for some of those who are in the ruling class to have some of the Loosh. For those who aren't aware what Loosh is just, it's lower vibrational energy that other beings or entities feed off of.
Yes. And naturally, to say that would mean that there would have to be higher vibrational energy that entities feed off of as well. From what I've been recently looking into, it's not just the negative aspect. Beings on the astral feed on the lower planes just by default. It goes positive too. I know most people, when they talk about that, they stay stuck on that negative. Oh my God, astral parasites, astral entities. But like, that's not something that you can escape. It's part of the food chain. It's not just pain and negativity. There are beings that feed on that, yes, but there's also beings that feed on very pleasant feelings and emotions. Which is why I say it would behoove the powers that be, most certainly, to usher in a golden age, as opposed to this, what people post about on the internet all day. It's coming, y'all. Better get ready.
Even I think that's part of the narrative too. Working a lot, not a lot with Tifreth, but on my birthday, I contacted Ball, and I kind of everything from the past couple of years, because that was the first goetic entity I tried to contact, and nothing really happened. And everything from the past couple of years, I finally like gathered all of it. I said, you know what, let me go in. And that's been reactivating states of when I was playfully, I didn't even know what I was doing, invoking Tifreth. And so the auguries or different points of the sun, like knowledge of that came to me. And then I remembered a time as well where I saw the black sun, and it was that you mentioned the aspect of Christ that never comes. But it's coming, y'all. The shift, the government, when the government takes over, these are all different expressions of the black sun.
Oh yeah. Better get ready, y'all. It's coming. It's coming. That's the food right there. Yep. No hesitation. I gotta write this down. Happy birthday, by the way. Genius Aries.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, happy belated birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Happy belated.
Yep. That evocation was quite cool. It's the first time where I heard music. I don't know if you've played the game called Don't Starve. Like when the people talk, it's like there's no words. You have to read what they're saying, but when they talk, there's like this very twisted jazz sound that plays. And then that's what I was hearing during the evocation. And I had a kind of a sigil that looked like a skull of a ram, but like a CT scan that always popped up in my head, but I never really thought about it. I had my own theories on it and whatnot, but during that invocation, it was like full blown, really detailed. Volume turned all the way up. And it's been a week, but the effects have been still kind of trickling in. And now I guess my focus is shifting more onto the mysteries of the Crucifixion. And to which I've also theorized that the Rose Cross is... I've thought about it on the drive to work. The Rose Cross is like the user manual for like pretty much any type of content you can deal with. And you can counteract whatever influences based on what the information of the Rose Cross gives you, especially if you build up the correspondences over time.
Yeah, and that is definitely a skill that a practical magician would want to become very comfortable in dealing with, some way to translate that information and data that we have no direct connection to. Because, at least from my limited experience so far, when we talk about the daemon coming through and really bringing some genius level information, stuff that you haven't thought of before, that involves a contact with intelligence beyond what is typical. And from what I have experienced, that contact has to be made through a liaison.
Yo, what just popped in my head is that through the spirit summoning course, the 7 classes of spirits, and we had the 2 extreme poles, consciousness and matter. I see that now, just from what you said, is like each level is kind of I have to draw a diagram. Like imagining a sphere, but each level is kind of like this thing that you twist. Each time you twist it, a different lens comes out.
Okay.
Now, on the God form level, there's fewer lenses that you can access, but they have a pretty big impact on the final result. And on some levels, like say the Goetia level, there's an extreme amount. So what we're doing is, from consciousness to matter, we're attuning the right filters. Some levels have more than others, but we're using correspondence and whatnot to like also influence how the lens. It's like, okay, so there's certain things that you look through where it's like geometric shapes. Like you see a bunch of triangles, but you twist the side of it, and then it'll start like forming into pyramids, forming into cubes. And as you twist it further and further, you get more complex shapes. Now, each one of these lenses have those, and that's where we use correspondences like the letters, the tarot, the elements, and that happens on each lens, you know, damn near infinite amount, where we're using all of those things to try to filter out spirit or consciousness.
Yes. A cosmic Rubik's Cube. Kind of like how when you go to the optometrist to get your eyes checked and they have it where they turn those different lenses that come through, and
Right.
eventually
Like
there's going to be one that allows you to see clearly.
that is exactly what's going on.
One day, this information will be able to be packaged up to where somebody who doesn't understand all this terminology but wants to will be able to figure it out pretty quickly. I think that day will be like in less than a year from now.
Uh-oh. That soon?
If we can articulate it this quickly, even to where, you know what I'm saying, sure, a lot of people might not fully grasp what the hell you're saying. I think that that most everybody here is getting the gist of it. That right there shows that the foundation is laid already, and it doesn't take much to package this stuff up into a comprehensive system, especially with new tools that help to align the mind to what is more useful and appropriate in a pretty rapid amount of time. The great work continues.
Something that you said like a year ago is that there is conversations in this world being had about some shit way more advanced than this. Each time I reach a new level, I'm like, holy shit, this is nothing.
Yeah. There's a room of people somewhere right now Where this right here is just the fundamentals to them, and they're working on some stuff that we can't even comprehend right now, can't even cognize, can't even guess. And to be honest, the stuff that I'm on today, I wouldn't be able to keep a conversation with myself 2 years ago. Not on this level. So just imagine. But I mean, that's the filtering process, and those people are necessary because without them, we wouldn't have what we're getting.
Correct.
On the etheric plane, there's again a chain of command where this information filters down. Those people serve as lenses, just as you and I and everyone here serve as lenses for people who haven't made it here yet. We receive that light, break it down, and send it to Malkuth. Malkuth picks it up and they're like, "Hey y'all, I got this deep idea. What if?" Right? And it's some shit that we've been on 10 years ago. But still, that's the chain of command. Somebody been on this 10 years ago. Somebody been on this 50 years ago.
I definitely see it centuries past and stuff like that, but
Americans been through this at the turn of the last century. I mean, you know, Miss Violet Mary Firth.
I would even go back to the country's founding. The founding fathers were taking Francis Bacon over here.
Okay. Yeah. Ooh, whoa. Okay, so I wish I could show the clip. I'm gonna upload it on my Instagram, but I'll just tell you right now. My cousin sent me this clip from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I don't normally think of him as like a super deep fellow, but he said something that was pretty damn awesome, right? So he's talking about how quickly the universe is expanding and filling with dark matter, and he talks about how when we look through our telescopes, and you know, he's talking from the material plane, as we look through our telescopes, we observe distant light, distant stars, different galaxies. But the thing is, he's saying like everything's expanding so fast, a couple hundred years from now, or even sooner, students will be looking into the sky and the stuff that we're talking about today will be gone, right? They'll be looking and things will be different than they were today. And he's saying like that's pretty mind-blowing in itself. But just imagine what's not present now that was present back then. And I thought, yo, that was hella deep. A lot of mysteries that we're trying to figure out today, we don't even have the pieces. And I don't just mean on Earth. They say these ancient people were able to accurately track the sky. Well, shit, what if it was a lot easier to observe back then? What if these patterns were laid out in such a way that it was very easy to digest versus today where things, hell, we can't look at it ourselves. We have to trust NASA and their computers and telescopes to tell us.
So maybe like, I'm thinking from this perspective, just pieces that go missing. And we have this filtering process going on. So what does the final expression look like? Now that different pieces have been supplemented by something else, maybe even completely different.
Stretched and twisted into new forms.
And also another insight. I guess a mystery or an unfolding of the mysteries of the crucifixion. One of them is NLP. Mainly we're dealing with language, so the petals on the rose cross. And also, of course, the tantric conversion from form to force, force to form. That's just one expression that evolved out of that. And being that it's the world of form, the expressions are infinite.
Yes.
But it's up to, you know, who's ever in that time period to kind of poke a hole in that piñata and try to get something that's useful and appropriate for the times. I don't know if you saw my message, but this was like a few days ago when I came close to this epiphany of what's it, Manly P. Hall, when he talked about the 7 liberal arts and sciences.
Mm-hmm.
What's it called? Oh, and you mentioned that this would have been burned and whatnot, but I had to object there in that for the time of 300 AD onward, or up to the 1400s with Martin Luther, these 7 levels were accessed not only by the civilizations, by things I mentioned previously, and there's more content to go into there, but the church had these 7 levels with the 7 liturgical rites: baptism, the root chakra, mysteries of the Eucharist, the water chakra or the Yasod level. There was a confirmation, the fire chakra or the will, and then 4th, which the last one you could probably find the most information on, was marriage, the union, heart chakra. And it's not too abstract to find the other 3 levels, but generally you can't like if you were just a normal person and you go through those church rites, you can't even access the other 3 without marriage. At the time, and that even marriage on its own is a mystery of the crucifixion, but at the time, that ritual process for some chakra work was a lifelong thing, and you had to go through these arduous and what we consider today crude rituals to access those chakras.
Arduous and crude rituals.
Still got power, don't get me wrong, but back then that was the only thing you could do. Now, what if using a mantra as easy as it is today in the Western part of the world wouldn't work? Just straight up.
So I think that kind of makes sense when we go back to what you were, at least what I interpreted from what you were saying earlier, as far as how these particular branches of religious expression were designed for a specific type of people, right, who were related to a certain spiritual lineage. And from what I said earlier, every religious system that came in the later days seems to be some method of attaining gnosis of the true will, but understanding that these the higher self is of a limited number and its expressions are endless comparably. Certain people go through certain processes that are pathways to their soul because they share a soul, whereas others, it wouldn't be effective because they don't have a spiritual link to that soul. Maybe the structure of the soul is the same, but the path to get there varies depending on which soul we're dealing with. Even looking back into when we were studying the culture and civilization of early Europe and how things were a little bit different back then, right? From the royalty to the peasants, right? Man, it could be that there was a specific level of development because that was a different soul.
And taking to what you brought about time, different influences. or even some that have never changed, some that were the most powerful thing back then, and today they might even be seen as an obstacle.
I think it's crucial when considering with the reference that was made with the presence and there being a different time with external environmental. Pardon me.
I think you're a bit muffled.
Oh, is that better? Can you hear me better now?
I'm just gonna mute myself.
Can you hear me okay now? Awesome. Just in reference to the construct of the soul, and in prior times with peasants, there being a different type of with peasants and whatnot. I think with that wedge of time, also not only with what was happening, and when I say the microcosm, I mean that on a planetary scale with environmental stimuli, also on a macrocosmic scale with because with our galaxy rotates around a central sun, and that there's something that's called the precession of the equinox, which is a 25,920-year cycle, and there's the residual energy that's exerted from that portion of the galaxy. You can break down the precession of the equinox also to the Kali Yuga time cycles, in which is also referenced in the Vedic texts. That affects the vibration that's emitted from the energy there, how it affects the beings on Earth, drastically has an impact on the consciousness of the individual at the time. So this also dovetails back to what was mentioned too about observing the stars, like in ancient times. I definitely think that there's corroborating evidence that the human faculty had a capacity to do different things back then comparative to now. But I'm getting a little tangential now because I'm getting excited. I forget what my original point is. If I remember it, I'll come back.
That has me thinking. I'm going to reintroduce a concept here. That it probably was 2 years ago. I found, or I at least got this theory of a dharmic barrier between, or it has been talked about in books, different dharma for East and West. But there's been an actual seeable location that you could see on a map today with how cities are built, and going at a not deeper level, but let's say more content level, different cultures and how one religion expresses itself just because there's a river splitting the two. There was a time when we get to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, you had a large group of people called the Huns that came out of the East. The karma of the West was kind of set in stone and stagnating. Then there was this large influx of people coming from the East and kicking events off. What you said there about the equinoxes, I'm actually interested to see what the hell was going on astrologically at that time to shake up the frame to something that's more recognizable today than what we have in antiquity.
There's direct correlations too with you can segment the precession of the equinox. Like I said, it correlates directly with the Kali Yugas and some of those other dharmic cycles in which you referenced. There's interesting data too that correlates with some of what was going on a galactic level too, with solar flares, and how that affects human behavior and consciousness too. So there is I'm not sure which time frame you're referencing specifically, if you had a year or something, because I got a book over here I can check in a minute if you'd like.
Actually, let me see. Let's do 400. 434.
434 AD.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, just give me a moment and I'll check.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Flavius.
Flavius, baby. Speaking of that, too, in school, we rarely go over the Eastern Roman Empire and later what was called the Byzantine Empire. But there's such a profound impact on things right now that have evolved out of that, namely with stuff going on in Eastern Europe, also with the rise of the Asadic influence we would call Islam. And I also have a theory slowly being validated of people, reincarnated people from that empire actually being what we might call conservative here in the United States. But I think that will become more evident over time. And even that, so Constantine actually moved capital of Rome from Rome to Byzantium. And in that is kind of a literal sacrifice of the Western Empire so the Eastern one could survive. But out of the West got born many different kingdoms and even ethnic groups. So that's like, to me, showing the one splitting into many, again, a mystery of the crucifixion. And later with the East, the following of that sparked the Renaissance around the mid 1400s. And that later, because of that fall, we later got the Age of Exploration. And because of the Age of Exploration, we got colonialization of different places around the world. And because of colonialization, then you get a whole different, a whole bunch of stuff happens. We get America off of that. We get a worldwide network off of that. So we get different, something that you brought up before, Trav, is the example of karma, where there's like a piece of oxygen that someone breathes and they go through life, and then that's breathed by an animal, breathed by grass, and then breathed by a baby that will become president. Now you got things from all different parts of the world. You got products, you got goods from one part of the world and just cycling throughout the globe. And such a minute piece of karma flowing through the hands of many. But multiply that by, however many trillions of items that you're keeping track of at one time.
I think it's a Buddhist saying that the everything is contained in the nothing, where it's like the sun is contained in the tree, and the tree contains the leaves, which contain the tree and the sun, and then the leaves eventually kind of go down into the ground and become foliage, right? It's just interesting correlation with some of the Buddhist philosophy too, how and eventually that foliage degrades down, becomes food for worms, which becomes a grass, which becomes food for another animal again, repeating the karmic cycle.
So truly, Jeff Bezos and Amazon is one of the modern greatest harmonizers of karma.
But Trav, isn't he mass layoffing people? Isn't he evil because he is the 1%?
Hey, understanding of reality is entirely based on, where you get your information from. I don't know about none of that, nor do I care. But what I do understand is that on the big picture, there's a lot of matter being circulated around the world like never before, thanks to ideas pulled down by one individual. And it's usually these types of individuals who circulate matter at a mass rate, which is probably why they deserve the money that they get. Let me see who's gonna log off after that.
Maybe, or not even maybe, the thought has also been coming to my head of gold. Supposedly there's only ever been enough gold to fill 2 football stadiums. Well, that's literally gold since the damn dawn of civilization. So that's changing shape, that's changing significance, that's changing hands. If you have something gold, that could have been held by a damn emperor or something.
2 football stadiums. That don't even seem like much.
Not at all.
And look at Prakriti as this giant egg. And imagine if, you know, her in the unmanifest realm, completely balanced and distributed, right? You've got a little layer of gold up here, and a layer of carbon, and a layer of like all the different potential elements of reality. And all that Prakriti is in the manifest dimension is all that stuff just mixing around, different forms, different shapes.
Dancing and gyrating.
Like what Einstein said, nothing is created or destroyed. I mean, that's what reality actually is. We call it an illusion because to our 5 senses, that process is happening so slow. But when you remove the equation of time, the reality does not look like this at all. At all. It would probably be mind-breaking to the average well, to anybody really. Your mind would break if you saw what reality looks like for real. Shatter. I don't think the mind as we know it can exist in reality's original state.
Reminds me of the second, it was Spider-Man Far From Home, where he's fighting this hologram elemental monster, but he doesn't know it's a hologram. And he goes inside of it and sees different, like all these projecting drones everywhere on the inside of this elemental monster. And imagine it from like the person's point of view, like if there's an average person who really bought into this belief that these monsters were really destroying shit and placing so much fear into it, and they happen to walk inside one of those. Oh, you're muted, Trev.
Oh, I am muted. The mind only exists to break all of those elements down into a form and filter it into a form that we can perceive. So that's why the moment that we reach enlightenment, we become liberated, because there's no more need for a mind outside of the illusion. Jeez Louise.
Ooh, that made me think of I forget which book, but those that have reached Kether and beyond, how they don't just disappear and dissolve. They still come back, but they're like it's a different thing entirely that comes back.
Wait, say that again?
It was a book on Kabbalah. I'm not sure, Ladder of Lights or Practical Guide, but it stated that when a person reaches Kether and those 3 realms beyond, they come back, but it's something different that comes back.
Oh yeah.
So something's back now, but it's not what we perceive as a mind. probably be very unsettling to someone who maybe has a little clairvoyance and is just used to sensing a bunch of minds and then finally sense this different thing.
This is why it's so hazardous to the ego. This is why it's so hazardous to the empirical mind, because a person who spent their entire life building their understanding of reality based on their five senses only to come into that kind of experience suddenly without any type of preparation or training, that is a devastating and traumatic thing. Devastating and traumatic. Hell, even the good Swami Niranjan Ananda Saraswati described his Kundalini experience as something frightening, horrifying. And that's somebody with practice.
And I had something, I wouldn't call it an awakening at all. I done tried, I did a Shiva ritual and a bunch of Kundalini stuff for a couple of days on end. And one day, something happened to where I could sense and feel everything happening on the planet, but I didn't know who I was while standing in that room. And I couldn't even speak because there was just like a loss of language. And I'm sitting there like trying to step around this room, just confused as all hell as to what was actually going on. Like I couldn't even recognize myself in the mirror. And the only thing that brought me back down was me seeing my notebook.
Sounds like fun. In hindsight. Not during.
Definitely not.
So I would imagine a level of preparation before an experience like that is what allows us to really translate that into something useful for us.
Mm-hmm. And our correspondence is acting as filters.
Mm-hmm. Nuru says Shiva means that which is not. You asked for it, huh?
Yeah, I actually caught smoke. What I did the ritual for didn't even matter after that.
The end justified the means.
It was made painfully obvious that that didn't matter, especially while coming back.
I love that. That's very clear and distinct. Shiva means that which is not. Doesn't mean blue man in the sky. It means that which is not. Which means you consider everything that is, which is your realm of understanding. Like, because see, everything that is, even that concept is limited to your personal understanding. When I think of Prakriti, I try to imagine everything that I've ever experienced sensually, right? What I've seen, heard, tasted, smelled, whatever. I try to imagine all of that. And once I have a firm grasp of that concept, then I try to go further. But to actually plunge yourself into an experience of that, again, like I said, it's mind shattering, it's mind breaking, because the mind has a tendency, like what I said in the beginning of this conversation, Ahamkara, before it's fully developed, it has a tendency to cling onto external things and say, okay, this is me, I'm comfortable, I'm stable, this is how I know I exist, because I have external things to perceive. But if Shiva is that which is not, and Kali is the destroyer, come on, man. That function, if it's not properly tuned, will be broken, ripped, crushed.
Oh, man. It just got taken away. That's the closest I could describe. Yeah, the sleeping mask on is just ripped off. And you thought the sleeping mask was reality.
Something you definitely don't forget. I'll tell you that. I remember the first time that happened to me. I lost. I didn't understand what words were, shapes, clothes. Everything just lost meaning, and I'm trying to remember like what this was important, but I don't know why. I just felt it all slowly dissolving, all of it just gone. It was terrifying. And to see all the people in the room with me just leave. They said, fuck this, I'm out of here. Bro. Something you don't forget. Damn, that was 20 years ago.
That's how it was when I first met you, Travis, and I took the inner light activating system, and I was doing all the meditations. I thought I was going crazy. I was like going to the hospital and shit. It was like crazy. Yeah, it was like maybe 4 years ago. But you know, that's when I really started doing the practice.
Mm-hmm.
All the meditations, and something happened. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is this?
We don't know what we don't know. So like most people think they have a good idea of what spirit and spirituality is. Most people think they know what that is, right? Everybody thinks they know what that is until you actually experience it. And here's the thing, like you know, ain't no guess, ain't no doubt. But I don't think most people know. I don't think that most people know. They think they do, but they don't. It's in the eyes. It's in how you talk, how you describe it. You can't fake it.
Mm-mm. And it's something you'll never forget.
Like what Maestro said, there's a certain level that you touch that when you return, something else comes back. Something else comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an act because it doesn't revert to how it was before. Sheesh.
I remember that day, like I just did soccer shooting and I went to go take a bath, and it felt like I took the only way I can describe it is like I took a lot of drugs, man. I was just like out of my mind. It was crazy. And I ran downstairs to my wife. I was like, I'm dying. And she was, yo, it was crazy, bro.
Yeah.
The way I describe my experience is like it's like being on cocaine without the bad. Is the way that I said it.
I had a nerve to smoke weed after that. Those next few sessions weren't great.
Mm-hmm.
Man.
I was on the floor. I was getting ready to delete everything I had on my phone of the Vedic image. I was on the floor in my room, high as hell, looking at Kali on my phone, like, what have I done by fucking with this shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had that feeling, yes.
Oh man,
I was
okay.
nauseous. I called
Yes.
my homeboy from upstairs in the dorm. I was like, yo, you gotta come get me now.
Oh, when you look at these Vedic images and you say, what the hell have I done? Oh man, what did I change? What did I alter? What did I really, man?
Yeah.
And you have to bring it back home. Sheesh. Sheesh.
Hell no.
Welcome to Spiritual Epiphanies Anonymous. My name is Travis.
Yeah, and then like when I ran downstairs in the kitchen, I had this on the wall, and I took that bitch down.
Yep. I know what you're talking
Oh man, yep.
You ain't reached that point yet? Don't talk to me about no damn spiritual experience. You take that shit down, what have I done? Woo, boy.
I got nauseous. I was like, why the fuck did I ever touch this shit?
Right. Boy, that's a feeling right there, boy. That's a feeling right there.
What was about to happen?
Did I fuck myself up? Irreparable damage.
I was like, damn, there's all these, all the grimoires warning of going insane. I'm like, oh
Right.
shit.
Mm-hmm.
Where did I go wrong? Should I ever even touch this stuff in the first place?
And guess what? This is the point where a lot of people do what?
Man, run. I know someone that ran to Christianity.
Right.
She slingshotted herself into it.
Right. That's when they run back to church. So don't judge these people when they go back to church. They went through experience like this and it was overwhelming. Don't get mad at it. Don't make fun of these people. They're all about the occult, dark side, this, that, and the third.
Yeah, I ran back to Buddhism. It wasn't that far of a stretch, but I did not fuck with nothing. And I think the second night after, I got high and watched the fucking was that Hereditary?
Mm-hmm.
That made it even worse because I started deleting fucking chaos magic and shit off my phone.
Man.
I was like, I'm never touching this shit.
See, I didn't know what that experience was, so we started studying the Kabbalah, and I said that was the 32nd path for me. Getting initiated to your side. Yeah.
That's the first step. Oh my God, it's the first step on the tree.
You staring at Hades like, God damn, I should not have come down here. You wave just to see he's real, but then he flinches a little. You're like, oh shit. And he ain't playing.
That was the story of what Stephanie. Yeah.
He's on that path as well.
Man, listen. I might have to clip that part out. That's some real stuff.
I couldn't even look at damn freaking Nazi the spider the same either. That became a symbol of trauma.
Ay, ay, ay.
That's a very fitting symbol now that I think about it, because it's beyond Om. It's on the other side of that net.
Om, and that's a very curious topic, because I haven't read anyone describe it the way that I've experienced it. So I'm trying to tread carefully. I'm trying to make sure that I'm actually experiencing this level of Om, or if this is something else. But I equate it to Doth, almost as if it's this separation, this barrier, this depth between, the archetypal, the unexpressed, and the expressed. Just looking at the Tatwashuddhi diagram, right? And also, Om lines up with Ahamkara, the third eye. So as I mentioned before, that true will, that Ahamkara, exists beyond the Tanmatras, beyond the Indriyas. It's on the outside. And it's what shapes and forms everything beneath it. But you got to get out of the net to be able to reach that. That's where the spider is. The weaver. Dancing on each thread, making it go through Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Sometimes when I do Tatwashuddhi, it takes me a little while to push through that. And I try to see it from different angles, and I find that Rajas and Tamas aren't absolute either. It depends on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it upside down, Rajas becomes Tamas. So it isn't even like a solid, it's literally just describing an expression of energy in relation to itself. So when it goes like this, we say Rajas. When it reaches the apex, sattva, and when it goes down, tamas. But if you change your perspective, it's the inverse. And hell, if you look at it from the side, now sattva becomes rajas. You get what I'm saying? Instead of an up down, it's actually a spiral, right? Is that clear, or did that not come through clear?
I got it confused at the sattva part.
Okay. Maybe I can illustrate
I
it.
get the other two.
Oh, I see. By the cards. Simons is down.
Yes.
Rises is up. Then you put it back down, the same symbols.
Okay, so let's say when you reach that level of Om, you're dealing with pure vibration of existence, right? And when the wave goes up, we say that that's rajas, right? When it reaches its apex and it's still, we say, okay, that's the sattva. When it drops down, we say that's the tamas. But if you change the perspective, it flips now. What we saw before as rajas is now, and this is coming from looking down, right? If you're in the causal triangle, if you're in the upper triad looking down on creation, check that out. Rajas has become tamas, and tamas has become rajas. But what I was saying earlier is, what if this isn't actually just an up-down wave? What if this is actually a spiral, right? Like, say if we tilt this to the side, we see that it's not simply going up and down, it's going in a circle. Is that clear so far? Testing 1 2.
Yeah. See, the cards show it.
Yes. In truth, okay, and that's what I'm getting at. So if you see this is not simply going up, but going up at an angle, and this is actually a spiral looked at from the side. If you're able to see it like that, you can see it's actually a circle. Which means that to really be sattvic is to see this whole thing as not really going up and down or going anywhere. It's just vibration as it is. Maybe there will be a better way to explain that in the future. But the importance of that is that when you're able to observe creation from the unmanifest angle, it all looks perfect and complete. It's not moving, it's not evolving, it's not changing. It just is. But only from within creation does it look chaotic. Only from within creation does it look like things are going up and things are going down, and oh, Jeff Bezos is doing this, and Bill Gates, whatever. Joe Biden. President Joe Biden.
That coworker I mentioned earlier, we had talked about he had brought up like a Bill Gates theory, whatever, and that kind of goes with, I couldn't really put it into words, but the gist of what I said was that this archetype of person, no matter, like, say if it's a down month or an up month, to them it's literally just the same thing. Like, it looks different, but I was thinking in terms of Goetia, like how the same entity that could give you a disease can heal you. Likewise, someone having a down month for their company, they see it as the same as up month, and just give it that same connotation. That's how they're able to last as long. One might say this.
Yes. Because if you see it as a down month and you take action on that action that you take is made out of desperation and fear, first of all, and that may just be what causes you to deplete resources that you could have saved for the next go round. Jeez Louise.
That's a large transmutation right there. Say if someone were overly emotional and something like that happens to them, and they take the frame of, you know, this is what I'm dealing with. It is as it is. Then those emotions like are changed into something else. They literally have to die the death path in order to even have some relevancy anymore.
Nero said, when you get high spiritually, you're gonna crash eventually, then climb and slide again. One day you realize it's not the real you going up or down, but the construct. The true self was always just watching. Looking back, that makes sense. Because again, like I said, it's a mind-shattering, mind-breaking experience, not a self-breaking experience. It's the mind, it's the persona, it's the ego that's going through all that. Because ultimately, after those experiences we just described, we're still here. They've shaped the ego to adjust to the true self. They've shown the ego that it is not the true self. Peace, Hecate. Man, oh man.
And that starts to put a lot of other experiences, being that you clarify that as the 32nd path. Like it puts other experiences that I can recall now into actual paths. Even that, like we saw between three, you know, where two are gathered, there I am. So that's between three of us. We can now classify that as an objective experience that happens, or four of us, excuse me. So maybe further on, if we identify the hallmarks of those paths, we can not only see who's done it, but then the conversation may start to get more and more fine-tuned.
Yes, yes. And that's part of the point, right? That's part of the journey. The universe, the higher self, God, soul, spirit, it's all talking to us at all times, but we have a very poor communication system. But the more that we're able to the more that we're able to interpret our experiences in accordance with the symbols that we have researched, compiled, correspondences, the more that we're able to do that, the more that we are able to speak the language. And guess what? A conversation is two-way. We can't speak to the universe because we don't speak his language. But if we know that every symbol corresponds with the cosmic principle, and we're able to interpret life according to its symbols, this is where we get to communicating back.
This is what Ophiel was talking about in the art and practice of contact with the demiurge.
I believe so. I'm afraid of the demiurge, so I never read that book out loud on YouTube for everyone to hear. But I believe so. I think that the more you develop a connection with the actual soul, the more opportunity you have to see across the abyss. Because it was the soul that came across, or we can say the spirit, the higher principle which came across that abyss. So if you don't have a connection with that higher principle, you definitely can't see across the abyss. I'm not saying you can navigate your way through it. I'm just saying it becomes a little bit more clear. Which goes back to kind of what I was saying before about in order to work with those type of higher level entities, there has to be a middleman, because we don't have a direct connection to those type of forces, those type of cosmic forces. Our minds don't have a direct link to those higher forces.
I mentioned this when you did your Kabbalah reading, is that the two older forms, the Orthodox and Catholic traditions of Christianity, they employ saints as the intermediary, but they provide like a cookie cutter way, like a pre-made one there for you that one like a normal person can take. If we look at stuff, maybe the Vedic side of things, there was a Sadhguru video where someone asked, why is there 63 million gods? And he said, because at a time in India, there were only 63 million people.
That's quite insightful.
If we look at what Michael W. Ford has been given in all his grimoires about making your own, or build-a-bearing your own intercessor deity.
Yes.
Kind of see a very subtle practice of what's going on.
Yes.
So that's something I was thinking about too, MC. So when they get these pictures, that's when they in the Astrals and they pulling down this imagination, they see the deities' eyes.
Can you say that again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you, but can you say that again?
So I'm saying, so when they get the images of these deities, this is when they in your side, then they pull it down. Like when you see like the pictures. Okay.
All right. So about that, that's one thing I've been exploring as well, specifically with Orthodox, or that's what's called Catholic. But when we say Catholic over here in the West, we refer to Western Catholic. But it's largely Yasod and Bina based. But one of the essential practices is mantra and yantra, and along with Eucharist. So that's dealing with the Yasod. But there's a lot of Yasod symbology within that. So what's happening that I piece together is that the etheric body is being purified, and through dharana on the chief saint, one's etheric double begins to mimic this intercessor more and more and more and more, until one day there's that perfect match, or through one instance, however. But that's what how some swaths of people don't need all them saints. They just need one. They go to a specific aspect of Jesus to be the intermediary for them. Which to me is a sign of heavy prana, the more singular you get. And even what we consider like American Protestantism, one of these subtle agreements is that you are your own savior. So a lot of these Protestant churches, or even Protestant countries, are generally have more adventurous, more successful business people than Orthodox and Catholic. Why? Because there is a presupposition that you don't need the church. And the other two, they say you absolutely need the church. Whereas these breakaway things without the church, you unconsciously assume the role of that intermediary.
Creating your personal daemon versus using a cookie cutter daemon. If you don't have a lawyer, we will provide one for you.
That makes sense, because that's one of the practices we used to do in Christianity. We had to pray for the Holy Ghost and for the Holy Ghost to come into us and be the mediator to connect to God. I don't know if anybody did that before.
Exactly.
I don't know if it was included in any of Travis Matus's class or anything like that.
Yeah. But they call it receiving the Holy Ghost and speaking in tongues.
And I'm certain that every now and then somebody actually makes that work, you know? But the thing is, people don't have the teaching behind that practice. So most people think that receiving the Holy Ghost and speaking in tongues is flailing around the damn church, spouting gibberish. But if these people had the teaching of what this actually means, then just imagine there would actually be real power. I think that's what happened. The same thing that's slowly happening with this so-called spiritual community. I think that there was a real connection to this higher aspect of reality, and it was being taught, but it slowly became more and more about the money, about the ego and human things, that people stopped teaching the spiritual stuff and just focused on the human stuff. Like, you go to church now, they're going to talk about everyday life stuff. Not metaphors for spiritual connection, but everyday life stuff. You
A
can't.
slight reframe of that is, well, I'm thinking of two. One is that, well, people are unfortunate to be in kind of a, denomination or sect that just doesn't suit them. But secondly, as well, this is what breeds somebody to get frustrated. This is what breeds discontent. And through discontent, you get somebody searching.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And or they throw themselves, they push past the concept of belief where their life goes, quote unquote, downhill. And the only thing they got is Jesus. All this emotion built up, and they're pushing past what they thought to be possible. And they're using Jesus as that divine intercessor. To the point where they pull off something incredibly amazing. And some continue down that path. Some will just be like, it was thanks to Jesus. And then, that'll be their personal story.
I went through that. The church ain't helped me, but Jesus sure did. I went through that experience.
Care to share that one?
Just a lot of pain and suffering, and just life wasn't very happy. To be honest, that was like the first heartbreak I ever went through. And I just, being a young person, I didn't really have anybody to lean on or talk to, or any friend. Like, I was literally just left alone. So all I knew was the love of God they talked about, but church sucked. It didn't give me nothing. So I was online. Back then you had to watch the stream. It wasn't streaming, like you had to download through iTunes, right? And I'm watching like Creflo Dollar and what's that dude's name? The scary looking older white guy. Y'all know his name. Another one of those prosperity preachers. COVID-19, I blow the wind of God. That guy. Y'all don't know these people. Anyways, I was watching a lot of these evangelists and whatnot, and I was listening because they would name specific passages and quotes, and they would talk about memorizing them and reciting them and using them as, like, I don't know, to me, I interpreted it as like spells. So like I had specific lines and quotes, and like I taught myself how to pray. It wasn't about no damn church. It was just me and my connection to the spirit. You know what I'm saying? And over time, it was proven that I couldn't lean on another human being. I had no choice but to forge a relationship with Christ.
Yo, that shows your own personal church. So you started with the presuppositions. Those verses became presuppositions, which all else connected to. Well, they changed the Bible.
Man.
Took the what's it called? They took the book of Enoch out because you were about to confuse it with some star seeds.
There we go. There we go. It would have been more harmful to keep these books in than it would have helped. Which is why they're still changing the Bible, right? Now they've got the universal translation or whatever. Thank you, Hakeem Lamidi. Kenneth Copeland, that was his name.
That starts to illuminate a lot of other things now, because I would go with different family members to their respective churches, and I'd be like, what the hell is going on? And there may be like one that I like, but the rest, like, to me, are wacky as shit. But to the people in there, that's pulling them along.
This is how spirit operates. I think that you really shed some light on a very powerful piece of information, Maestro. At least from my takeaway from this, is that there's a thing called group soul, right? The words may change. Who knows what the fuck it's called? But there's a concept where there is this higher self that shares incarnations. There's not one higher self per person. There's one higher self in many incarnations. And it would seem that that's happening simultaneously. Everyone is tied to some oversoul. And that same oversoul has other incarnations at the same time. Which means that what's good for one ain't good for another. But if you continue to expand, even those higher selves are coming out of one, right? It's a pyramid. So each religion was made for a specific type of soul. Them people over there in the Middle East with their women all covered up like that, that's a specific kind of soul that requires that, right? Human sacrifice, well, not human sacrifice, animal sacrifices and things like that. These are to feed a certain kind of soul.
Okay, that puts huge context. So it's probably the last thing because I got to get ready for the work tomorrow. But there was a certain it was year 1000. I gotta travel. I'm gonna request to write in your newsletter so I could cover all these tangent topics. But when Eastern Rome, it was still considered the Rome at the time. Later, at the same time, you had Charlemagne and the Pope, and that became Holy Roman Empire, whatnot. But in the East, there was what was called the iconoclastic movement. So that was breaking of saint images, that was breaking of images of Jesus. And at first, I interpreted that as because Islam had been on the rise and kind of been the dominant power within that region. Prana-wise, that's what you needed to adapt to. There was one of these movements, and I actually found a video of someone coming to the same conclusions, but it was cool. But the emperor had died, and who took over was an empress, and that was grounds for the Pope to split off and kind of do his own thing in the West. But she went back to worshiping images. But the effect of that is now all Eastern Europe has these soft, mellow images, while if let's say they kept it iconoclastic, they kept it formless, then it would have been something that it would have been catering to a different oversoul. Like history would have unfolded a completely different way. And I perceived the Empress's decision at first as ignorant, but what you said, it kind of put a reframe on it pretty much.
And let's take that thing and expand it even to today. You got different walks of life, different people, like you were talking about conservatives and whatnot. Maybe it isn't about right or wrong. Maybe each one of these people belong to a different soul. And maybe, just maybe, there's a new soul or some type of soul that was asleep for a very long time that is just waking up. Maybe there's something different that's been included into the mix as well.
Oh, Trav, are you talking about AI?
I'm talking about whatever it is that people are, what's the word where we take something new and we make it, demonize it, make it an enemy? What's that called? Being xenophobic or whatever. I don't know.
Scapegoat?
Get the concept. Perhaps there's a soul that maybe is brand new or has just been asleep for a very long time, at least out of recent memory, because everything cycles. Maybe there's a soul that has died recently. That's why we see a certain type of people maybe being phased out.
I know
This
There is one. The original Orthodox Church no longer has a city or a country to support it. It's literally, it has churches around the world, but it's literally like a block. Its headquarters is like a block. And that's it. And it's slowly being picked off.
Yo, this shit makes so much sense, yo.
Maybe we are the product of a specific type of energy that is seeking to establish itself in the world.
Oh man, this I could see that, because like my mom, she was the last generation of that Pentecostal that was with that school, and she died like 3 years ago. And this other generation, these TikTok generations, my other family members, they don't give a fuck about none of that at the moment.
Yo, dude, mark my words. I've actually seen a religion come back from the dead slowly but surely. But Islam, or something that Trav had mentioned, I forget what it was during the Kabbalah live stream. But at least from what I see, Tifereth is no longer suffice to cover this much grounds of karma. And Islam is about to be the next main shit due to Yasadic influence. So that TikTok generation, that is what they about to hop on very soon. As well as Zoroastrianism. It is the blending of East and West. It's like Proto-Abrahamic. So a lot of the stuff in the West you could trace there, but it's also the very last evolution of the Vedic.
Ooh.
And it dwindled down a lot. I don't even think there may be 1 million worshippers, but that's been gaining more and more popularity. I think that's about to make a comeback.
This really makes me think differently about some of the things that I'm involved in. It's a war going on outside. Nobody's safe from. That's a song lyric. That wasn't me trying to fearmonger.
I know you heard it from Trav. He said the Archons are at war right now. So you got to buy my anti-Archon hats.
Buy it now, it's on sale.
Look.
What a world. What a world.
I have to get going. I enjoyed this consortium of people tonight. I haven't seen the YouTube chat, but I'm sure there was some insightful stuff as well. But I gotta get going. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Very insightful.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. It was very insightful and illuminating. It was great.
All right, y'all. Peace.
Damn, I forgot to ask MC something. I wanted to ask him about when Manny Pure Heart made a statement about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John being like part of the four bodies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look into that more.
Four elements. I think my tea has frozen. I'd better grab it. Okay. So to really kind of bridge what I was saying earlier with what we came up with later about the true will in relation to the Oversoul, I think there's actually levels to this will, levels to the Oversoul. Just like any form of government, some are at a higher level of influence, some are at a lower level of influence. And to those who have not developed a true will, right, like most people, you can still be a part of this Oversoul system. It's just that you're not a you're at a certain level where you're more under the influence of its outpouring versus one who's able to really start to solidify that individual will. I think at that point you're in a way entrusted with more ability. Because in truth, this Oversoul, it manages matter. And human beings who are unconscious identify with matter. So they quite literally go with the flow that these higher forces are circulating. Most people don't operate under free will. Most people operate under the influence of something that understands them more than they understand themselves. And this isn't really spoken from the frame of what's good and what's bad, because it's necessary for life. But the thing is, as a spiritual seeker, I think one of the questions that we really start to ask is, why? Why am I the way that I am? Why do I behave the way that I behave? Why do I like the things I like? Why do I dislike the things that I dislike? I think if one follows that trail of thought, we really start to realize that most of the decisions that we made have been from influences that are not our own. And it's true. It don't even have to be like spooky and cosmic. Most of the decisions that we make in life come from what happened when we were kids. Family, parents, school, church, whatever beliefs of people that raised us, we generally congeal all that and create a personality out of those things. Even if we're resisting and running away from those people, our behavior is still a reaction of the influences that were given to us. And if we never take the time to analyze them, we never exercise free will. Being able to choose between Coke and Pepsi is not free will. Free will is understanding why you want a soda in the first place. Oh, it's because my body's addicted to sugar. That's why. Now is it still free will? I can stop whenever I want. Says everyone who's addicted to something. What decides when you want to stop? Helicopter, helicopter. But that's the natural thing that happens when people start to wake up. That's why a lot of us start to wonder if we're actually fulfilling our destiny, our purpose, if we're living up to our potential. I think that's why a lot of us have thoughts and concerns with that, because we start to feel like what we're here for is more than what we're actually doing, right? We start to get this innate, unspoken feeling that the life that we live, we could be doing more, but we don't know what. So we start searching and looking around. And our old pattern is looking to matter, looking to earth, looking to the five senses to tell us what to do, right? So we look at other people. They're doing this. Maybe that's what I should be doing. They're doing that. Maybe that's what I should be doing. But we try that and we're unfulfilled, sometimes even more, because now we're caught up in some other mess. Same thing happens when people come to spirituality. We want to know what's the right way to learn about our spirit and our soul. What's the right way to learn about ourselves? They all say know thyself. They all say go within. No one tells me how to do that. So maybe if I watch somebody's channel, I'll just mimic what they're doing, and that's what going within is. The way becomes cloudy and difficult. So when the teacher says that it's a solo journey, what that means is you're not going to find it based on what somebody else has done. What someone else has done can serve as an excellent guideline for sure, but you're going to have to do the work yourself. Maybe Tatwashuddhi isn't for you. Maybe you should go to church. Maybe dark side, demon, devil, melanin ain't the path for you. Maybe it's not. I know it's popular, but maybe that's not what you're built for. And that's okay. Ah, 11:11. I barely missed it. Peace, Matthew Watson. I don't know. Let me know in the chat. What do you guys think? Does that echo thoughts that you've had before, or not so much? Just simply give me a yes or a no. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Curve says, hey Trav, just wanted to let you know I found a great book that breaks down the Kabbalion for children in story format. I got it from my daughter. Whoa, that sounds pretty damn cool. I'm glad that you are able to spend more time with your daughter. But yeah, I'm definitely interested in that book. Okay, a couple people in the chat says yes, yes, yes. Awesome. I've had those thoughts. Me too. Hey, you're breaking up.
The ones that we believe that we are surrounded, that we belong in the dark, but we are light.
Yeah, and it can be conflicting sometimes too, because what we believe and then what other people tell us these words mean, right? Like a lot of people say how evil Lilith is, how evil Satan, how evil Lucifer, all this other stuff. But like when some of us think of those terms, it's not an evil thing at all. So like a conflict starts because people are telling us what we're doing is wrong, but it's not. But look at that also. A lot of it has to do with us looking outside for answers, looking at matter, looking at other people for answers. There's got to be some way to verify within yourself what is true. And that's that spiritual aspect. And I don't mean based on what makes you feel good or feel bad.
Me with my astral room, I always like to keep and practice my astral room. And to be honest with you, all of a sudden I came out with this Goetic guy 68. What's number 68? Belial? Is that Belial? I think it's Belial. So it pops up in my head and I'm like, why it's Belial? It's in my head. Like what the hell? You know, all of a sudden it was Belial, Belial, Belial. It was just that constantly Belial. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck? Was that Belial in my head? I don't know, but it was Belial. It was something about Belial. And then I'm like, wait a minute, let me just start doing my research with Belial because, you know, I've been working with the Goetica too. And most likely I've been working with the bees, like Belial, you know, I call him Baba. And you know, I've been working with the bees. I'm looking, I noticing that I've been working with the bees of the Goetica. I'm like, so what the hell Belial has to do with everything here? I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm questioning myself, Belial. So I was like, I started doing the research with Belial. And of course, you know, some of us, we still have that practice with the incense and all that. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I know I'm doing my advanced stuff, but I still like my, you know, my incense and my stuff around there.
Yeah.
My activities with Belial up there, you know, just trying to like get myself into the thought of find out what Belial wants. I was like, I know it's us. I get that. I'm like, I get it, but what he's trying to tell me, what are you trying to tell me? And all of a sudden last night, I keep concentrating myself in a meditation stage. And all of a sudden I wake up with like, you know, with the astral room and working with Belial, it comes out like a very interesting symbol because you know how the mind works with symbols. And I had that symbol in my head. And all of a sudden with something like Belial say like he loves me. And I was like, okay. I was like, I love you too. It's like, you know, it's just like a simple type of thing. Like it has nothing to do with like evil, useless piece of whatever. I'm like, that's not Belial. I'm like, what's going on here? So I was like, it has nothing to do with stupidity like that people say. It's just like you're saying, you just confirming. I'm like, Belial doesn't have that concept of like, it's what you make out of him. It's what he is, or what that entity is. So I feel comfortable with it. I'm not, like, I didn't feel like, oh my God, he's like worse than Satan, the father of Satan's, and all this nonsense. But all of a sudden it pops up. It pops Belial. I was like, all right. So far, Belial, it's on the list for me.
Belial. And in truth, Belial serves as a gateway, as do all of his comrades. The other 71 serves as a gateway to the astral plane and these different states or life forms that inhabit the astral plane. They're not the astral plane themselves, but they do represent pathways, doorways, and through them we're able to access parts of us that we have always with us, but we never meet them face to face. I think that the Goetia was an original early form of shadow work. I really do.
Well, I suppose I'm going to be working with Belial for the astral room now. A little bit of extra step up there.
That's what he's for. Belial, Baal, Belith. Belith is good. Have you worked with Belith?
No, it's just, I don't know, Belial pops up all of a sudden, bro. It was just like my routine, like my regular routine, and it's just come out in my head. It's just pop. I don't know. I had not paid attention to Belial. He just popped. I was like, all right. Dig it in. Get into the astral. By the way, the elements in the astral, very interesting, I must say. I noticed a couple of things. When you are searching for the elements on your astral room, if you are in the astral and then you notice that you are completely dark, all dark, you want to picture fire, or actually you want to put fire in your table if you are doing forms of meditation. And the interesting thing is that with the fire, you will be able to see everything around. I guess that's what they call the, I guess that's what I see in like the, in the tarot cards when they have like, I think it's Hermes or the, it must be Hermes, or the older guy with the lamp walking by. He works with that lamp, which is the fire. He'll be able to see things. So being said, I noticed that if I don't have that on, it's the astral is completely dark. If I put the fire on, literally I'll be able to see what's going on around me or surround me. Now, when it becomes with the breathing, which I noticed last night, sometimes because of the meditations, and how the posture is very important for meditation. And sometimes I don't have the flexibility of like a perfect posture on for my back. And even I still do my long-term meditations. So sometimes when I do those meditations and I'm getting into that astral stage, I feel a little bit of rough in the breathing. And all of a sudden, my mind says, just take a deep breath, just relax and breathe. In other words, the subconscious or conscious, it tells me deep breathing. Something tells me that. So I start doing my deep breathing. And when I start doing my deep breathing, I get into that concept of wanting to return back to this room. And all of a sudden I was like, do not come back, stay here. So, but if I want to stay here or in the astral room, if I want to stay in the astral room, most likely I say, take a deep breath. So I keep breathing and breathing and breathing. But the breathing is in the slow steps, very slow. So while I'm in that slow, deep breathing is where I'll be able to move from the room. You know what I mean? From the astral room. So I don't stay sitting anymore. I'm breathing. I have the fire, I can see. But while I'm breathing, I can move easily. So I don't feel that pressure of my heart rate, or I don't feel the pain on my body. Well, I have pain on my body most of the time. And it feels like literally I am literally on the astral room. So there is a code when we get into the astral room. There's always, in my case, I don't know about everybody else's case, but in my case, it's like a TV screen. It's like a big TV screen. And once I'm seeing that TV screen, I already say, okay, I'm in the astral room. So once I'm in the astral room, I get the conversation with the unconscious, and then unconscious gives me symbols and sigils, and for me to draw it and try to interpret it, just like you're saying, interpret the meaning of it. So that is something that I noticed that I have with the elements, with the air element and with the fire element, because I've been doing this for quite a bit, fire and air element combined. Now with the water, we did it with Alora. We in a couple of people in here. I think he's on the group. I'm not sure if he's here. Society Eject. I think he's around here. I'm not sure, but I think he's around. So we trying to do this with the water element, and it did work for the communication for all of us. So it's quite of active with this and the astral room itself.
I did it with Alora, and me and her was on the beach, and she said you was talking to her, and me and Alora was walking.
Right. Yeah. So it's a communication type of element. We have access to communicate to each other. Water is, to me, was the most successful one for that.
I got to interpret the fire. I'm still in the water. I got to build up a little bit more, because I'm getting there, but I'm not able to hold it.
Right.
So maybe I might introduce the fire.
So do air, because with the air, I was able to help to hold in the stage of astral. Well, so depends. Maybe you might need the fire for you to be able to stay in the astral. But for me was, getting into the air. And once I enter into that air element, I'm able to stay in the astral room as a first step. You know what I mean? But I found it interesting that working with the elements and the astral, it's a pretty cool combination.
When it comes to the breathing, the rate of breathing has a lot to do with the quality of prana that you're working with. Short, sharp, shallow breaths is an indication of quality prana that isn't of the highest quality, whereas slower, more gradual, deeper breaths indicates a quality of higher prana. So that might also have to do with what you described. And the quality of prana has a direct effect of the quality of element that you're working with. Sheesh.
domain form of element on us, or we all equally divided on the 5 elements themselves?
Could you repeat that? It was didn't come through all the way.
Is there like, do we have like a major domain element within us?
So, like, what we actually are is pure consciousness, which resides above and beyond the influence of the elements. That's what we actually are. But then when we come down into the mental plane, astral plane, etheric plane, physical plane, this is what I was talking about earlier as far as the true will. When magicians talk about finding the true will, what we're talking about is finding that self that exists above and beyond the elements. But most people don't have that solidified yet. And this is why we astral project. This is why we learn how to do creative visualization. This is why we try to get our minds right with NLP and shadow work, because doing that allows us to strengthen and fortify and individualize our awareness of our mental body, astral body, etheric body, and physical body. If we don't have a solidified individual awareness of those bodies, if we don't have that clear, then the Ahamkara, the ego, it looks to the environment to define itself, right? So if you don't have a clarified individual nature, if you don't have that Ahamkara fully sharpened, then on the physical plane, we look at physical elements to define us. In the etheric plane, we look at etheric elements. Astral plane, we look at the astral plane to define us. Mental plane, we think that the mental substance define us. With that being said, whatever elements that compose the things that we use to express ourselves, those are the elements that seem to have a greater influence over us. For example, if an individual, and this is why, like, saw that right there? This is why the book Initiation into Hermetics asks you to sit down and take into an account your personality and look at how it's related to the different elements. Some people are more fire type. That has to do with a lot of passion or anger, right? A lot of people, or volatility, instability. Some people are very emotional, watery type. Some people are very air type. Some people are very earthy type. But that's, again, that's not you. That is you attaching to certain characteristics and the elements responsible for those characteristics. Is that clear?
Yes. Yep.
So that's why you can be a Sagittarius, but you might be very emotional, which isn't typically related to water. But the fact that you identify yourself with external forces, you allow that element to have more influence over you. We allow it. We allow it. Since we allow it, it can be changed extremely easily.
Okay.
When, like earlier, you said, you know, that it's all me, right? And I know it's all me, and this is true. But what we do as people is we pick and choose the qualities that make us feel the best, makes us feel stronger, makes us feel comfortable. Really, we pick and choose the qualities that make us feel comfortable, and those qualities can be represented by elements. And since we choose those qualities to represent us, we choose what elements to represent us.
Got it.
But in all actuality, what you are is Akash. What you are is the womb of all those elements. But, you know, like I said, I can say that, but you have to have an experience of what that means. And you get that experience from doing things like astral projection, things like etheric projection. Why? Because while astral projecting, while lucid dreaming, while visualizing, while in deep meditation and deep contemplation, you truly see firsthand that all of these qualities, characteristics, and elements that we latch onto rise and fall, rise and fall. How many times have you sat down in meditation and you see an image come up If you don't attach to it, it goes away. You've seen a thought come up, you've seen a feeling, you've seen a memory, you've seen a fantasy come up, and then it goes away. Simply having that experience it should be enough to teach you that you are not those experiences. They come and they go. Which means you're not these elements. They shift and they change, they come and they go. Akash means space, right? You are the space in which these elements express themselves. You are the space in which these characteristics express themselves. That's what you are.
This space. Okay. The wound. Mm-hmm.
Black egg. So when we do talk with Shooty, that's exactly what we're doing, but on a very subconscious level. When we do talk with Shooty, what we're doing is we watch those elements dissolve within us, and we become that space again. And then we release the space, and we become that which is not, which is Shiva, which is that Shiva level, that which is not, like Nuru said. Then we go back, dissolve Papa Purusha, and recreate ourselves with those same elements. But the simple fact that you're working from a perspective where you are creating the element again, like I said, that should show you enough that you are not the element. You are the space in which the element expresses itself. That's what meditation shows us, that you are actually Akash, not the elements. You are the fifth element. You are the unicorn's horn. Diamond, clear. The white rose, the Vajra. All these are symbols of Akash.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Like when you were saying that personality is just like the states we put into bags. And like if somebody expressing like their anger spirit, and it's like, well, this is just my personality. You know what I mean? I'm this dude, and I'm always angry. They just expressing this state in the physical form, and then they just be like that for the rest of their life.
And that's not non-attachment. That's just clinging on to a state and justifying it, making an excuse for it. A child can do that. A baby can do that.
And this made me understand possession a lot more. Now people say they get possession shit. Mm-hmm. This made me understand it. Like, oh, so this is what you get possessed with.
Yes.
With this state.
And everyone is possessed.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is possessed. Because Akash is the space.
Bro.
So, Curve says, so in a way we are conduits for these elementals until we master them through practice. Exactly. And what does mastery look like? Mastery looks like on all levels of existence, you recognize that you are the space. On the physical plane, you recognize that you are the space to hold physical characteristics, right? I'm not what I wear, but I am the space that allows this to occur. On the etheric plane, you are not the things that you imagine, you are imagination itself. On the astral plane, you are not the emotions and experiences and the states that you exhibit. You are the space that allows it to happen. Mental plane, you are not those thoughts. You're not those concepts. You're the space that allows it to happen. Can you get any clearer than that?
No, bro. That's like this just clarify like a lot of stuff for me.
And look, the cards display that. Because even if we are dealing with the physical plane, even if we're dealing with the earth dimension, guess what? If we can break down the earth element with 20% slices, right? Earth element. This is the etheric aspect of the earth element. This is the astral aspect of the earth element. We're still in the earth element, but we're dealing with quality here. This is the mental aspect of the earth element. And guess what? This is the space that allows it all to happen. Every element has this aspect, the Akash aspect of it. So when we talk about mastering the elementals, what we're really talking about is becoming that level to where you understand that you are not the content, but you are the context. These are sacred symbols. And when they're meditated upon, they can potentially lead you to an experience of what the hell I'm talking about. Good enough for the Golden Dawn, good enough for me. Let's get ready to rumble. Nuru says, think of Akash as both space and counter space. Space is the expressed universe, but Akash is really the unexpressed part. The thing that said let there be light was not illuminated light. That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. So again, we're looking at the words, right? When I say space, it sounds very objective. But just like what Nuru said, it's both the objective and the subjective, because we're dealing with something that is beyond the five senses. So not necessarily the space in your room, but that which allows it to occur, that which facilitates. That's what Akash is. Koi Sewell says, you were talking about entities on different planes getting prana from an emotion or a negative pattern. What if it was your own different bodies, your own etheric body consuming your own fear energy? That's exactly what I believe it is, and that's an excellent observation, Koi Sewell. That's exactly what it is, because there can be nothing else. There can be nothing else. That's why I keep saying there are no enemies, not here or anywhere else. Not here or anywhere else. There can't be. There's no enemies in this universe. Curve says, we are always the observer until we believe we are the experience, but it's just an experience that we are observing. Precisely. Cybernet says, the context is the container. That's right. Jeez Louise, man. Jeez Louise. But it's your choice where we go from here. It's your choice. If it's easier for you to feel good about yourself by projecting onto something external, then that's what you're going to gravitate towards. Projection. That's why people are always finding a scapegoat, something to be afraid of, something to complain about, something to feel like we gotta fight. That's projection, because you've identified with something internal, and instead of neutralizing it on the inside, you find an external form to represent it so you can have the fight on the outside. But all you're doing is causing more karma. You're circulating more matter instead of absorbing it and assimilating it and having power over it. You are becoming overpowered by it when you seek someone and something to fight against. Because you never win a fight. Nobody wins.
I could chime in and well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I could chime in and say that's how you get out of the matrix. That's how you escape the conditioning, because you go in, you do your shadow works, you do your meditations, and you get closer to the source, and it brings about the correspondences, like you said in your book. There are some people that have a hard time losing weight, and there are some people that can eat whatever and stay at that athletic build. That's because they're telling themselves something that the universe or your thoughts are creating correspondences for, like, oh, I have a high metabolism, I have a fast metabolism.
Yeah.
I keep telling myself that, or like we spoke about before a long time ago with the Lord, you keep telling yourself you're lucky. You know, the universe is going to give you feedback on that. So, like society said, you got these people that walk around, oh, I'm just an angry person. No, you've attached to an energy that you're not letting go of, and the correspondences have built to continuously show you that you're an angry person. You're not an angry person. This is how we go in our own minds and defeat things like depression. It comes from what you tell yourself and the beliefs. So all of this whole conversation tonight has been full circle with what MC Maestro was saying up to Hecate, when you she was mentioning how your beliefs will change and how the church and stuff, like example, you have the pentagram, the 5-pointed star. That scares the hell out of some people. They look at that and say, oh, witch shit, get that away from me. But the quote unquote witches look at that and say, oh, that's just the elements. What? All that is grass, water, and blah, 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 blah. You know, depending on your level, you can take it up to a higher level, but that's the pentagram you're seeing. One person sees nature, one person sees evil. That's because of what you've been taught and what you tell yourself and what's gathering information on that because of what you told yourself. So long story short, it all really came full circle for me, this whole conversation, and I wanted to just throw that out there. Yeah, because it was time for it. It all connects, like you said, and when it all connects, that's how you know it works.
Right. The proof is literally in the pudding. It verifies itself. It is self-evident. So again, there's an example of not needing someone to tell you if it's right or wrong. You now have a system to figure out what's right and what's not right.
Oh, one more thing. Hecate, I don't know if you're still here, but you mentioned Belial earlier, or however you pronounce it. I usually chop things up, but just earlier today, I was thinking, because I was listening to myself, and I'm like, I wonder who's not attracted to my voice, because there was there's an artist named Belial or something, Bilil or whatever, and a very quote unquote spiritual person tried to put me onto them before, and I'm like, I can't get past his voice. So then today I'm sitting there thinking that, like, wow, what if people are doing that to me? And I sat here and did that to this Belial person because I couldn't get past how this guy sounds. And then for you to, and then there was other things too, because he was a part of a group that a few of my favorite other artists are in. And then that went into, well, how old is he? Because that group is old. And then we look young too, because we're practicing all of this. We're getting our youth in. So then you just saying that kind of brought that full circle. So now I think Akash, and like that's what that whole conversation between myself was. Now I can, after this live, I can go look at that on an Akashic level, thanks to you just saying that. You had no idea. I did not talk to you before. So
Belial.
that's the court. Yeah, those are the correspondences. That's how it happens.
Correspondences, that's right.
And I'm just sitting here and I got that. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't pester myself. I'm just sitting here and it came to me. Well, because you said it.
Yeah. Amazing. Belial's on the house, people. At this moment right now. But definitely I'm going to experiment with Belial.
In reference to Akash again, Nuru says, I tell folks, think of Akash as the hidden part of a popped kernel of popcorn, that underskin that you don't really see, but it gets stuck in your teeth. The hidden part of that which is expressed. That never seen part, the source of the puffed popcorn, is that unseen prior kernel. This underside or unseen side of space is counter space. This is Akash, the kernel inside. At the 0 point of all illuminated light and matter, including your cells and biology, is this Akash, the anti-space or counter space, the underside kernel of source energy which gives rise to life. Very cool. Helicopter.
I know this might be off topic a little bit, but I can't stop laughing when I was reading your book, Travis, and when you was blaming your job for not making enough money. You was mad at your job. I say, how the fuck you mad at him, bro? You signed up for it.
And hey, you be
but
surprised.
it just show you how people, yeah.
Some people worse than that.
Yeah.
I remember blaming a girlfriend because I didn't like her anymore.
Yeah, they had me reflecting on a lot of things. Like when I was young, like I used to get in trouble, and I was like, if my mom and them never moved me up, I would have never got in trouble. Like, bro, what the fuck? You know, just like shit like that came up.
It starts when we're young, you know what I'm saying? And some people never get rid of that.
Yep.
I used to know, thank God I don't know her anymore, grown-ass woman, thinking just like a child, right? Especially that. Anything that happened to her, it was always somebody else's fault. Always. Even if she brought it on herself, it was somebody else's fault. Can't go very far with people like that. You just can't. They literally live in a fantasy world that is incompatible with the world that the rest of us live in. Everyone lives in their own version of reality for sure, but the problem starts when your version of reality don't line up with the outside world. I like to think the opposite. Everything is my fault. Everything is my fault. And ironically, I've had drastically less stress because of that.
Yeah. Because you can come up with a solution, man.
Right. And when you blame everything else, you're literally telling yourself that you're powerless. You're literally telling yourself, I have to go along with someone else's reality and I have no choice. My only fighting back is complaining. That's a sorry existence, man. Can't do it ever again. And then get around with a group of other people and just complain. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
People try to do that at work. And I'm like, nah, bro, I'm here to work and do what I got to do. That's what they paying me for. I don't care about none of that shit.
Right.
And they still do it, but still complain while they do it. And they days be miserable. You can tell the look on their face.
Sheesh. Bringing back flashbacks, man. I remember this one girl literally every day would complain about the same thing.
Yep.
It was she wasn't getting enough hours, or they wasn't putting her on the schedule. It was something like that. I'm talking about every single day she'd come into that lunchroom talking about how she's not getting enough hours and they not putting her on the schedule, and somebody, girl, it's been over a year and you still talking about this. You ain't signed up for another part-time job or what? Nothing. Man.
But what about the people that be like, fuck this job, I'm gonna quit, and then be back the next day, then the next day, then the next day, the next day.
Yeah.
And I used to do it all the time.
It's funny.
Daddy, I'll find that.
If it's an issue, take it in your own hands and do something about it. But don't like okay, if you're gonna complain about it maybe one time, right? After that, we need to be finding a solution, working towards a solution.
Me and my wife came up with something like, when we talk about like little issues we have, we talk about it in the car. We don't talk about it in our bedroom. We don't bring none of that shit to the bedroom. Whatever happened at work, whatever happened outside, no, we in here chilling.
I like that.
Yep.
In a way, I mean, hell, that's just like doing rituals, right? You want to try to do your ritual at a certain time, in a certain state, in a certain outfit, maybe in a certain room. I think that works for negative stuff too.
Could you imagine having that energy in your bedroom, then going to sleep?
No, hell no. Tiny tweaks that can have big effects, big changes.
The 2 millimeter shifts. Just you said those little tweaks. I call them 2 millimeter shifts. It's like with your golf swing. Just 2 millimeters, and you can get it like right on the green. They're so simple, and when you figure them out and you execute them, the colossal change, it's so significant. It's very, I don't even know what word you want to say, rewarding, whatever whatever your outcome is. They're awesome. I love them.
At some point I was going to say that's what she said, but you kept changing it.
Good one.
2 millimeter shifts. Reality is a reflection of what you got going on in your subjective realm. To me, that's a good thing. I'm glad about that.
Exactly. And when you realize that too, because a lot of people are still in the frame of mind where they're just kind of like reacting to the circumstances of their life, not realizing that they're the co-creator of it. And when you begin to take extreme responsibility, that gives you, knowing that you can change that too, you don't get significance anymore from complaining about the circumstances. You know, you become solution oriented in your thinking. Dramatic shift.
Yes. I mean, when the conversation starts getting into that complaining realm, like, I start tuning out. Like, I can't do nothing about with this. We gotta change the subject or something, because I'm about to head up out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start talking about what we can do about it, I'm all ears.
I used to be that guy that used to always have that sad story. Then one day I heard myself. I was like, "Oh my god, bro!" And I immediately stopped.
Yeah. I remember that. Around that same time where I was talking about me really leaning on Christ, and like when I was in the whole Christian thing and really taking it seriously. It was around that same time. I couldn't tell my sob story to enough people. I had to let everybody know what happened to me and how badly it hurt me and how I've never been hurt this bad before in life. I had to let and then it was repeated. Then it was, some people heard the story multiple times. And I noticed like people were like moving away from me. They didn't, because they knew I was going to come with that. Nobody wants to hear that all the time, man. Nobody wants to do that. What? I understand, I sympathize with you, but when it comes to a certain point, like, either you got to move on or stop talking about it. Because
that shit was, yeah. Even thinking about it now, I remember sometimes we used to have a wall who could tell like the most fucked up stories about their life. Yeah, this happened to me. Nah, bro. Dang, shit, this happened to me. You know, just like that. Oh, man.
Yeah. And what does that do? Like, no, bro, no. Like, first of all, now I feel like my story is invalidated. You wasn't even listening, but I gotta listen to your story. One upping. Those aren't very. That's not. It's not productive, you know. But hey, we live and we learn. Like I said, I can talk shit about that because I've been through it. I've been through it. I've been that person. But that's a vibratory level, you know. Even if you recall from, what was that book, Power versus Force?
You mean the chart that's in that book?
Yes. Just the concept of these different states. They're like radio stations. You're only gonna hear you're not gonna hear 3-6 Mafia on the country station. You only hear certain songs on certain stations that you're tuned into.
Tear down the club?
Right. Nothing tear the club up on.
That's it. I mean, I haven't thought about that song in ages, but that's a good song, man.
It was like when Man and P always talking about how we supposed to be a tuned station.
Just about to say that, dude.
Yeah, and it's like, you ever have somebody driving a car and your favorite song come on, but they change it and they keep changing and changing and changing and changing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't even like the concept of listening to the radio. Like, they got 5 songs that they're gonna play over and over again. I don't even get to choose. That's why I don't like watching TV. Like, I want to watch what I want to watch, or listen to what I want to listen to when I want to. But different strokes for different folks. Here's a concept. Earlier we talked about these group souls. What if, as you change your inner vibration, you come into an alignment with a different group soul? Is it a static thing? Do you just belong to one soul, or could you shift to another soul? So, would soul just be maybe just an advanced egregore, an advanced thought form? What we call a soul actually just be another word for a thought form, an egregore? A collective entity? Interesting.
I think there's definitely room for something like that to exist. Most certainly. But I think when you're incarnate in human form on the physical plane, depending upon how the choices that you choose to make and how it affects your soul evolution too will also be determined to an extent if you would change your soul tribe or whatnot, because you could choose it could also be written in your blueprint, right? Your soul contract or something prior to incarnating.
Right.
So it's
almost like when one company acquires the rights to another company. The company is the same, but it gets a new owner.
Yes, that's a good analogy too. I get that one. Or like, acquiring the subsidiary. But I was hearkening back to what you mentioned previously too, where it's there's essentially a soul. I can't remember the exact terminology which you used to articulate it. However, just that there's essentially a soul of some kind that would be in the astral, and then it could be broken up into multiple bodies, incarnated in the physical form. I think there's possibility for that to happen on another plane of existence that could be above that. So I don't know if what I just said makes sense, but it was a very thought-provoking question which you've just asked, so I'm thinking about it.
Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to zero.
So could this what Bobby been when he was talking about the twin soul and twin flame and all that?
Say it again.
Can you hear me? I say, cause it's been when Bobby used to talk about the twin soul and the twin flame, and how people start talking about that.
I don't know where. Go
Or
ahead.
soulmates. Could that be the same category?
I don't know where this concept of twin souls came from. Like, I haven't come across that in anything I've ever studied. Only social media. Like, I mean, I know people talk about it. I don't know where the hell it came from, but I've never really subscribed to that. I've always seen that more of like a ego thing, or more like a human thing. Not to say that I'm just saying I haven't seen it anywhere. I've never seen it in any of my studies. Twin flame, twin soul. But when I think of soul, a few of my understandings about the concept have changed. Number one, that the soul is perishable. It's not something that's eternal. And number two, it isn't necessarily just yours. It's usually something shared. So what if when they talk about this twin flame, twin soul thing, it should actually be reversed? Like two people that belong to one soul.
Did you say that on your studies that you study that the soul can be it's not eternal?
Right.
Yeah, because I know the Bible talk about that too. How the soul can be destroyed, the body and the soul.
Right.
The soul of man.
Right, but coming up, at least just acquiring data from other people, we get this idea that the soul is like this infinite internal thing, but in truth, a lot of us are working to create a connection or to create that thing. But it really has to do with the terminology that we're using, right? It's going to depend on what you define as that word. When I say soul, what I'm talking about is the culmination of the higher bodies, the mental body, the astral body, the etheric body, the higher self. But what exists on the causal plane is not the soul. That's the spirit. That's Purusha, that one being, that infinite God thing. That's what's eternal, because eventually the soul has to give way to that principle, because it was created by it. It came from it. So maybe there's a little bit of light to what Bobby was talking about. And just like I've never really seen no twin flame stuff anywhere, every time I learn something and remember about how Bobby Hemmett talked about it, he's usually, hell, he's always been spot on. I ain't never heard him say anything that was just pulled out of his ass. And again, I don't think that most people really celebrate the fact that he was so accurate and intricate in his study. I think they just celebrate him because of what they paint him to be, right? Some kind of spiritual hero that saved them from Christianity. But they don't acknowledge or recognize like how accurate and precise of a scholar he actually was. He didn't do like these folks and watch a video and go make something up. Like, he worked for the information that he had, and he did the work, at least for himself, to back up his sources and verify this stuff as best as he could. So with that being said, when he talked about maybe everyone not having a soul, maybe it wasn't so much of a racist thing. Maybe it was more of the fact that the soul is acknowledged as something that has to be built, something that has to be connected with, something that requires effort and not just a given. The Lost and Profound says, so would the physical body be a projection of the soul? Absolutely. The physical body is a projection of the etheric body. The etheric body is a projection of the astral body. The astral body is a projection of the mental body, and the mental body is a projection of the causal body, which is what we know of as the Most High. And there's a few more levels past that, but yeah, you get the gist of it. King Prophet says, OG Bobby, hard work, not no Google search. Or at least today, not no TikTok search. Wait till we start seeing the actual TikTok scholars, right? The one that start getting like big ass followings and shit. Whew. Or maybe we're already there. Taught with Shooty. Praise the Lord.
I'm curious about the melanin jokes that you guys keep making. I don't understand the reference. that it makes to him? Can someone explain that to me?
See, that's because you ain't got sufficient enough melanin to understand the joke.
Oh man, maybe we should send him a video.
Sure, how about that? I'd appreciate it.
Oh man, you talking about 10 years of internet lore? 10 years, 20, 30 years of internet lore. That's your melanin.
People still teach that.
I believe it. And some people cling onto that thing so hard they don't want to hear anything other than. Dreamlike 4 asks, what would it feel like physically to be a very, very high state of consciousness? Well, that's the thing. When we talk about a very, very high state of consciousness, it starts to become removed from objective experience. It starts to become removed from physicality. The physical experience is what we call empirical. And what that means is we create that off of what we receive from the 5 senses. So your physical reality is all the stuff that you pick up from your 5 senses. For most people who do not have a spiritual experience to reference to, all they know is physicality. So we actually wouldn't describe a very high state of consciousness in physical means because it's beyond physical. It's a different type of, it's not something that you feel with your skin. It's not something that you smell with your nose. It's not something that you see with your eyes. It actually is experienced with the soul itself. And like we were saying, the soul is that aspect of self that is beyond the body. This is why it's so difficult to prove spiritual experiences and stuff like that, because it's happening in a place that isn't shared, not tangibly. There aren't words because it's a different language. It's like having a file on your computer. You got a Windows computer, but it's a file made for Mac. You just can't open it. There's not the equipment there for that. In a way, it's like asking, what's it like to feel a dream in your physical body? What does it feel like physically to be in a dream? Well, you'd have to say that your physical body is asleep, so you can't explain it physically. What's it feel like in your body when you're daydreaming and having an imagination? We're talking about different operating systems. A very high state of consciousness can feel pain and feel pleasure, but the difference is there is not an attachment or an identification with those feelings. That's why a guru in yoga can drink a shot of liquor or smoke a cigar or go to the strip club, but that has nothing to do with his level of consciousness attainment. That's why the Agori can sit in the graveyard, cover himself with ashes, right? It has nothing to do with the physical plane. It's transcendent of and encompassing all. Why? Because a very, very high state of consciousness can be expressed as anything and all things. The higher up you go, it becomes wide like an umbrella until you get to the highest point, which contains everything. The lower you go, the more separated things seem, right? The lower you go, the more separated things seem. But the higher you go, you start to realize the synthesis, the connection, the relativity between everything else. Depending on what your zodiac sign is, you're not the only one with it. It's countless people who got the same zodiac sign, yet you all relay certain similarities. Well, the higher aspect is the zodiac sign itself. It's an energy, but the energy expresses itself in a physical form. Now, the expression is going to be different depending on all kind of factors, right? Your culture, things that happened to you in your past, all kind of things are going to depend on how that one energy expresses itself. Let me know if that sheds light on your question. And that's part of the walk, part of the journey, part of this whole thing is to learn to not identify with this limited body, but learn to identify with the thing that is expressing itself through a body. And that's an experience that each individual has to earn for themselves. Big bad Beetleborg. Give me one of them hot dogs. Okay, so I hope that everyone got something really nice to think about. Something that helps with having a little bit more clarity on your spiritual path. Maybe having a little bit more clarity on understanding what it means to reach your potential, understanding what it means to be connected to your spiritual aspect, right? Maybe even some tips, techniques that you can use to go a little bit deeper. Or if nothing else, hopefully that you got some type of sense of calmness, right? Some type of state that is useful for you to continue your study without feeling anxiety. On Saturday, we are going to continue with the reading of The Sacred Magic of the Kabbalah by Manly P. Hall. Tune in for that. And I think I'm going to get back to work on writing because I'm trying to do a bunch of stuff. Oh boy. Let me know in my last YouTube short, for those of you who are watching who haven't seen it yet. I've been thinking about doing like a physical newsletter, right? Like a magazine. Nothing too extravagant, right? It might be, I don't know, 12, 15 pages, something like that. But I've been wanting to do a newsletter focused on things like Kabbalah, tarot, astrology, and something that can be a great monthly piece of solid information that you can use to further enhance your understanding of what the hell we're doing, right? A newsletter that will go in depth on the different Sephirah, the different paths, their relation to the tarot cards, their relation to astrological principles, all sorts of different things. The goal of this magazine, of this newsletter, is to provide information for you to see the connection of all of these things, for you to see the synthesis of all these things. Because one of the problems that I know that people have is they feel like there's so much information and it seems scattered, right? One moment we're talking about Kabbalah, another moment we're talking about this and that and the third, and it seems separated. But what I've come to find is that all this stuff is actually connected, and not just connected, but it all comes from a common source. So I would like to produce something like that that can be mailed out to people. I did get some people saying that it would actually be inconvenient to be physical and they prefer a digital copy. And that's valid, I suppose. But I think there's a certain kind of magic of just having something tangible, you know, something that you can have on your desk or on your shelf or something like that. Plus, it'll also be an opportunity to kind of, you know, maybe feature guest authors to input, stuff like that. You know, since we've got a little community going here, I'm sure there's plenty of people besides me who have information and experience on these subjects. But it sounds like fun. And just the way that I broke it down, it doesn't seem like it'd be something overwhelming, right? Especially if it's only like 15, 20 pages, something like that. But let me know what you guys think about that. But I've definitely tapped into the whole writing thing now. Like, another book, a physical book is coming soon. Better believe that. I just think that a magazine would just be something that could be kind of just short and consistent, you know, kind of keeping people focused, keeping me focused. I think it'd be a cool idea. But either way, this will be the year of physical, tangible magic. I still got that thing that I have not let slip yet, that amazing surprise that no one else has done yet. All right, but anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I hope you had a wonderful night. I certainly have. Had some pretty cool things talked about. But I'm gonna dip. I'm still awake and excited. I got more work to do. So have a good night, y'all. Have a good night.
Peace, everybody.
Peace, everyone. Peace, peace. Have a great night.
Peace.
Good night, everyone. Good night,
Mm.
Travis.
Good night, Hecate. All right, everybody. Stay fantastic. All right. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you and you and you. Love yourself. Peace.